Good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to this live stream from the ARA. And today we are doing our second in our four-part series interviews with retired Navy SEAL Jason Redman. We're going to be discussing his book, his experience, and how he applies both his experience in the military and in civilian life to overcoming adversity. His book is called Overcome, and it's his second book. And then, but without any further delay, I want to welcome everybody, Jason Redman. Jason, welcome.
Hey, Vince, honored to be back. To all the members of ARA, huge shout out. I know 2020 has been challenging, to put it mildly, for all of us. But I've decided I'm going to coin a new phrase going into the future that anytime anything goes crazy train wreck wrong, I'm going to be like, man, that got all 2020'd up.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. We're going to turn 2020 into a verb.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that's going to stick. But look, thank you. Welcome. I know you've been up to quite a bit since the last time we spoke. I know that you traveled to Florida to participate in the Murph Challenge, and you had your dog had an unfortunate injury. And so you want to quickly catch us up over the last few weeks, and then we'll dive into this?
Yeah, I mean, like all of you guys, I've just been kind of adapting and pivoting to this unusual landscape we're in. Interesting. I was thinking about this. I'm having to do the same thing that ARA is, that we are now having to leverage all the technology that's out there, and critical to do so. How do we market ourselves better? How do we get ourselves out there? How do we leverage the virtual platform, and what's the future? And these are all the things that I know I'm looking at in our business. Hadn't done much traveling and got invited to go do the Murph Challenge. Lieutenant Michael Murphy was killed on June 28, 2005. I was there in Germany when our helo got shot down. It's from the Lone Survivor story, for those of you that may be familiar with it. But fast forward today, they have a huge grueling workout called the Murph Challenge, and now it's turned into a big fundraiser. And I went down and did the annual 15-year anniversary event in Florida. Like Vince said, my service dog Karma got injured, a freak accident. We were throwing a stick. So for all you dog owners out there, be careful when you throw sticks with your dog. I mean, I'd never thought about it, but my dog lunged forward to grab the stick on an incline and literally impaled himself on the stick. It broke off and 6 inches in his mouth and back into his neck, and we had to have emergency surgery, and we're very lucky he is okay. But important.
You think, yeah, but your suspicion is that Karma kind of got tired of you having the limelight, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Decided to have his own story to tell.
Wanted to show me up. Was like, this guy always talking about getting shot in the face and what he's been through. I'm going to show you guys how this is done.
Yeah,
and, it is crazy how similar in some ways our injuries are. I mean, my gunshot wound, the bullet hit me in the face, and the way it traveled through, miraculous that, an inch lower, it would have taken my jaw off, an inch higher, it would have taken my eye out, an inch higher than that, it would have impacted me in the brain. I mean, I'm very fortunate. And Karma was very similar. The way that stick went in, it missed his esophagus, it missed his carotid artery. It actually went in between layers of muscle. So instead of puncturing muscle, it actually went in between 2 layers of muscle. So he didn't even really have muscle damage.
Wow.
Super fortunate. And I think he's going to make a full recovery.
That's good to hear. So, so for those of you watching, you'll be happy to hear that for our next interview, Jason won't be joining us. We're going to be interviewing Karma.
He's going to wolf it up.
Yeah,
he's much more entertaining and better looking.
Well, all right. I'm not going to go there. But look, so last time we were together, we dove into the first section of your book, Overcome, and we talked about how to identify an ambush and then move away from it very quickly as quickly as you can, and the importance of doing that. And that was a great session. So if you're watching today and you haven't seen that, you certainly don't need to see it in order to watch this and enjoy this and learn from what we're about to talk about. But at some point, you'll want to go back and watch that as well. So today, we're going to move on to the next section of your book, which talks about leading yourself and leading others. And when it comes to leading others, You write in your book about what you believe are 5 key areas which people need to lead themselves. And the first one you talk about is physical fitness, diet, conditioning, strength, and even sleep. So I would like you to unpack for us, not just why you feel this is important, but why you say this should be, the physical aspect should be at the base of our Pentagon of peak performance.
Yeah, Vince, absolutely. And for everybody out there, I mean, I've led a very unique life. I've had unique experiences, from a leadership failure that I redeemed myself from to these incredible physical injuries I sustained on the battlefield. And as I did a lot of thinking and research and talking to other people, we came down to these 5 critical areas that I feel are the most important for leaders to put a little bit of time into so that you can be balanced. It's not necessarily to say that by doing these things, you're going to be phenomenally better in your area. Obviously, there's professional areas within the automotive recycling industry that you need to study, but that actually falls into one of my areas. So instead, it makes us balanced to handle the crisis that we are coming up against. And that foundational level is physical leadership. And the reason I talk about that is this machine that we walk around in and day out is incredible. But I tell you what, you need to optimize it to work at its higher levels. And if you're not optimizing it, then it actually slows you down. You don't think as clearly, you don't move as fast, you make poor decisions emotionally. We're not handling things as well. But I got to tell you guys, my physical fitness and physical leadership literally helped save my life. When they brought me into that combat hospital, I had lost almost half my blood volume. I needed over 7 blood transfusions over about a 48-hour period. And the doctors told me that it was my physical fitness that literally helped save my life. And it just to withstand that level of shock to the body. Now, I'm not telling you got to be at Navy SEAL levels, but I will tell you this. You will feel better day in and day out if you take care of your body. And it's one of the biggest things. It's never too late to do that. There's 3 components to physical leadership: fitness, so moving your body. Just get out, do something. It's so easy to get away from this when we're focused on business. I was guilty of this in my own life after I got out of the military. Number 2 is nutrition. The world we live in, I tell you what, we've done damage in some ways because processed foods have become so easy to get a hold of. You go into the grocery store, and if you ever looked around the grocery store, all the fresh food is kind of on all the aisles around, and then all the processed foods are on the inner aisles for the most part. And they're cheaper and they're easier to fix. It's so much quicker to fix a processed food meal, but they're not good for you in the long run. Every now and then they're fine. But when you're eating that all the time, it's not good for you. It slows down your metabolism. All that processed food, the sodium, the sugar, they build up in your body. It's leading to type 2 diabetes. It's leading to heart disease. It's leading to cancer. Science has proven this. It also slows down your thinking. It slows down your reaction. It creates emotional imbalances. So guys, I can't tell you enough how cleaning up your diet is going to make you feel better. And then the last component, guys, is sleep. Sleep is such a critical factor. And it's funny, being a retired Navy SEAL, a lot of people look at us and say, oh, well, you go an entire week without sleep. You guys are badasses because of that. And, I model my life on getting by without much sleep. And I have people all the time that come up to me and will say that. Oh man, I get by on 4 hours of sleep a night. And I always am like, hey, that's awesome, man. Congratulations. You are chronically fatigued. Yeah. And you actually had a leader tell you, and I forget his name, I'm sure you remember, but you had a leader at one time tell you that sleep is a weapon and a critical part of readiness. I thought that was a great quote. It is. Admiral Bill McRaven, the head of special operations, the admiral who ran the Bin Laden raid, famous for his speech, "Make Your Bed." He talked about that overseas when he was the JSOC commander, that we were running missions all the time, very high level missions, going after high level leaders across Iraq and Afghanistan. And these missions would be running all through the night, but he would have to get up early to talk to Washington every day on what was going on. And he prided himself on going to bed and getting 6 hours of sleep. And, sometimes guys would give him grief, but he'd say, hey, look, sleep is a weapon. And if you don't understand this, I mean, just go several days without sleep and look at your decision making, your emotional capacity, how you're processing information. We need sleep. And the more we study it, the more we are understanding that sleep is a critical thing that helps. It's a reason why pilots and individuals in the aviation community have crew rest.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we have a comment from Andy Latham, who's watching this from over in the UK. And I'm going to throw it up there real quick. But he likens our physical fitness to the way we treat our vehicles, right? We change the oil. We have to give them tune-ups. We have to service them. And if we don't, they're going to break down on us, right?
It's so true. And Andy, I love your example. As a matter of fact, I tell one similar that when you're born, we are a Ferrari. That the human body is a Ferrari. I mean, you look at any kid, they're moving 100 miles an hour, they're zipping and zooming. And then as we get older, if we don't take care of ourselves, we start to break down. And I know so many people, and I was guilty of this one time also. You go out in the garage one day and you're like, where's my Ferrari? Why is there this busted up Yugo here? You know,
the Yugo, that's going back.
But the good news is it's never too late. It's never too late to turn it back. And you may not be able to rebuild yourself back to the full speed Ferrari, but there's definitely a Mustang or, you know, a vintage Corvette under there that you can rebuild and get yourself back where you're running at the highest levels.
Yeah, look, it's not like many other aspects of our life where you're going to get out of it what you put into it. But and so that's an encouraging thought that, you know, it's never too late. You know, we see these inspirational videos of people going through weight loss transformation and healthy transformations into the better version of themselves. And it's so important about what you talk about. You mentioned kids. It always blows me away. Like if you watch a kid, they will run, like sprint from the couch to the other room. Like you and I mean, I don't know about you, but me, I'm going to get up, I'm going to walk over there, I'm going to pick up what I need and come back. But if a kid needs something, they sprint everywhere. And so it's hilarious. But to have that level of energy is amazing. But let's talk about emotional leadership. It's another component, right, of your Pentagon of Peak Performance. And you say that a person who can't or won't control their emotions will never be able to effectively lead others, right?
Yeah, in life, consistency is such a big thing. I mean, whether it's in business, whether it's in the relationships that you have. I mean, if you have someone that is erratic in their behavior, if one moment they're calm and the next minute they're flying off the handle, one moment they're overly joyous and the next minute they're down in the dumps, it's really hard to gauge and make decisions. And if you are a leader, it's critical that you manage those emotions. I mean, so many people allow their emotions to drive their decision making, to drive their motivation, to drive what they're doing. And in a business and in life, if you're a leader, it's critical to manage that. And no more so than in a military environment where lives truly are on the line, and we can be in some of the most overwhelming situations, and our ability to stay calm in the midst of chaos is critical. And this is definitely a learned thing. When I talk about the Pentagon of Peak Performance, everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Some people are naturally better in physical. Some people are naturally more scholastic. They love learning, so they're better in the mental aspect. Some people are naturally extroverts, so they're social. For me, emotional is my weakest area. When I was younger, I was that guy, man. When I was happy, I was off the charts happy. And when I was down, man, I was a grumpy individual to be around. And over time, I learned that I've got to manage that. And I now watch that because I watch for the indicators, no different than anything else in life. You know, I equate it to a teapot on the stove starting to boil. When you start seeing those little bubbles start coming up, when you're seeing the steam rising, it's time to take a step back and watch yourself. And this isn't perfection, Vince. I mean, the reality is, I still have setbacks. I still have moments where sometimes if I'm not careful, I'll go from 0 to 60 in a second. Yeah. And the biggest thing is, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, all of this is so much about self-awareness, right? And what if you can't self-evaluate, you're going to struggle. I mean, you don't even have to want to be a leader. I mean, even as a critical component within the system, you struggle if you can't self-assess and be self-aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. You talk about mental as part of one of those components, right?
And mental is just educating ourselves. It's constantly seeking new knowledge. It's challenging our beliefs. It's pushing outside of the status quo. It's pushing outside of our comfort zone. It is definitely, if you were living in a world, or if you're living in a business environment where you say, well, we've always done it this way and it has worked up till now, so let's just keep doing it this way. Mental leadership is challenging those beliefs and looking for those different things. I know ARA is in a big transition right now, the way the world is switching over. And I tell you what, how lucky in 2019, you guys were really looking at the technology sides of the world. How do we leverage technology? And bam, 2020 hit us and we're suddenly in this virtual world. So you're accelerating this belief system. That's mental leadership. And it's so critical. Never stop learning, never stop pushing yourself. Read, study, research. And those are the things that are going to help you stay balanced when the changes and the crisis come along.
So you talk about social leadership and you talk about rings of influence. So break that down for me.
So imagine, if you will, that there are 4 rings and it like a bullseye. And the innermost ring, that bullseye ring, is your immediate family. It is your spouse. It is your kids, you know, your immediate family members. A little bit further out, that is your closest friends. It's your best friends. It's the people who you speak with on a regular basis, who you hang out with. From there, it becomes our acquaintances and friends. You know, they may be work friends, they may be business friends. You know, they're people you see on a regular basis. And then that furthest ring out, those are just external, you know, associates that you see.
Those are your Facebook. That's your Facebook friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know, the Facebook friends. So yeah, it's people that you somewhat know, but you really don't know that well. It's people that maybe it's someone in the office that you know their name, but you really haven't taken the time to get to know them well. A lot of our business relationships are in that outermost ring. And the thing is, oftentimes we take for granted the innermost ring. Social leadership is making sure we invest in the most important rings. It's investing across that spectrum, but understand that when there is a crisis, when there is some sort of catastrophic life ambush event, you find yourself on the X, it is the innermost rings that are going to make the most difference. Look at, you know, I interviewed General Stan McChrystal in my book, Overcome. And if you guys remember, Stan McChrystal was the leading general of all forces in Afghanistan in 2010, 2011 timeframe. And he was my boss prior to that when he was the JSOC commander. And he got in some trouble. There was a big Rolling Stone article that came out where a reporter had followed around General McChrystal's staff, and some individuals had made some less than flattering comments about President Obama's staff and some of the members of his staff. And it was, you know, obviously all over this article. So General McChrystal had to resign. He resigned. So here you have a 36-year Army general, a rock star within the military leadership community. He probably would have been the next chairman of the Joint Staff. And like that, his career was over. And his social leadership, those outermost rings were not there for him. Those work relationships, those acquaintances, it was really just his closest friends. And the most critical relationship he had was his wife. And his wife said, hey, look, we've been through hard times and you're going to get up and we're going to drive forward and we're going to figure out the next path. That story's done. Let's write the new one. And that's what's so critical. That's why, guys, it's critical you invest in your innermost rings, because when crisis comes, that's who you're going to need. Wow.
What a powerful message for today, right? I had a similar experience several years ago. I had the carpet pulled out from underneath me, got let go of a very well-paying job. It was just an economy decision by the company. It was by title, so across the country, it didn't have anything to do with me. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, and I'll never forget, she put her hands on my shoulders, took a step closer, looked me right in the eye, and she even smiled a little bit. And she said, "We got this. Don't worry about it. We're going to get this." And investing, obviously you want to invest in your relationship with your spouse for every reason, right? But the same formula works as you expand out into that circle. Those relationships that you invest in are going to be the ones that help you through these life ambushes. And I think in today's culture, if we all just took a little more time to be intentional about meeting our neighbors, and instead of everybody's in a rush, they come home, they hit the garage door opens, they go in, they shut the garage door, and they go in their house. And I get it, people are tired, but if I could tell people something, it's look, go out and meet your neighbors, go out and talk to your neighbors, and try to build our communities back up. And it happens one neighbor at a time. And I think it would make for better communities, and better communities make for better society, right?
I agree, 100%.
Yeah. You talk about spiritual leadership, and if I understand correctly by reading your book, you don't necessarily mean organized religion, although that may be a part of it. It's really about seeing yourself as as you say in your book, a unique part of a much larger world, and investing time and resources to make the world better.
Yeah, Vince, absolutely. If I was to summarize spiritual leadership in probably one phrase, it would be having perspective. And perspective is how we see the world around us, understanding that we are not the center of the universe. I hate to tell you. There's a great big world out there, and there's a lot of people with problems. There's a lot going on. And no matter how big your problem is, somebody else out there has a bigger problem. And no matter how big your problem is and how unique you feel it is to you, somebody else has gone through it before, probably worse than what you're going through. So spiritual leadership is being in touch with those things. And it can be accomplished through a myriad of things. For me, faith plays a part in it. For others, meditation, breathing exercises, yoga, really it's anything you can do to kind of slow down your thinking process, to stop looking inward and look outward. It can be through charitable giving. It can be through going and actually working in a shelter, but it's engaging with people and recognizing there's a bigger world out there. There is a super high level of healing and a super high level of greater perspective that is built by always putting a little bit of time into that spiritual leadership. It's about gratitude, being grateful for the things we have. You know, there's a natural tendency, 2020 right now, I guarantee there's so many of us that are focused on the X and the negative, when the reality is there's a lot of positive things that are still happening. It may just be in your family. It may just be directly around you. Maybe you're building better relationships within your family because we're home more. Having gratitude, that's spiritual leadership and awareness. So I highly encourage, for most people, this is their weakest area, but I highly encourage you take a little bit of time every week, put a little bit of time into it. Take some time, meditate, go volunteer, do something, find a church.
I agree 100%. And I think just the act of investing in other people's lives, it does a couple things. Like first of all, it's going to take the focus off of me, right? Because sometimes I'm spending too much time in my own head, and maybe that can make a person depressed or anxious or this and that. And I've talked to people before. I have a very close friend who got let go as a result of the quarantines and the COVID. She's in the hospitality industry, and fortunately, she's not struggling to pay the bills. She can get by, but she's psychologically that's a hit, right? And I was talking to her, and she said, I don't know what I'm going to do for the next few months. And I told her, I said, go volunteer. I said, just take the focus off of what's going on in your world right now. And I bet you if you go volunteer, whether it's a soup kitchen or a homeless shelter, whatever it is, find a place to volunteer. There's tons of opportunities. And the minute you start taking the focus off you and investing your time and energy into other people, if nothing else, you're going to feel better. You're just going to feel better. And then I think there's going to be more to it about that. A lot of students coming out of high school, sometimes they talk about a gap year, right? And in my family, we've got 5 kids, and we've always said, look, if you want to do a gap year, I don't have a problem with a gap year. You're not going to spend a gap year on my couch. But if you want to spend a gap year and go invest in other people, like just go join something, do something, and be a part of a bigger community where you're investing in other people's lives. I think that's a very worthy way to spend your time. And I promise at the end of that, whatever it is, 5 months, 6 months, a year, you're going to come out of it being far better orientated toward what you want to do with your life than you would have if you spent a year backpacking through Europe or sitting on the couch playing video games. So this concept of investing in other people, is I'm big on that. I think it's huge, and I'm glad to see, you know, that you believe this and you talk about it as well. Talk about how critical. So we've talked about the Pentagon of Peak Performance. We talked about how critical it is. Where do people start?
So I'll tell you where they start. I want to close out one thing with the Pentagon, and that's this.
Okay.
It is about balance. Most people are strong in one or two, maybe three categories, but I equate it to the legs of a table. If you only have one leg or two legs, that table is wobbly. It doesn't stand very well. You know, they got to come up with elaborate ways, and it's easy to tip it over. You know, three legs, a little more stable. Four legs, obviously, that's the typical table balancing point. But five legs, man, you look at a five-legged table with a heavy top, you know, solid legs, it's really hard to overturn. And that's how life is. When crisis comes along, if you are balanced and well planted, it's easier to manage that crisis and easier or harder to get knocked over. So that's why it's critical to build. So,
like a five-leg table, yeah. I mean, I get it. You look at that, and you can knock a four-legged table over. It's really difficult to knock a five-legged table over. So I want to move into you giving us some pointers on where to start. But I also want, for people watching, I want to encourage you. This is the time where you can start. You know, you're welcome, as Andy did. You're welcome to chime in at any point. Send your comments to the chat. And Jason will answer them. I'm sure your comments will be for Jason. Nobody wants to hear me talk more, but just chime in. And so we're going to be going for probably another 10 minutes or so. But I do want to remind everybody watching, this is an open Q&A forum. So while Jason's talking, if something comes to mind, comment and we'll address it. So Jason, tell us where people start.
So obviously, we got to make changes. I mean, if you see, wow, you know, I really need to work on my emotional leadership, or boy, I've neglected my spiritual leadership for years, I would say just pick one area. And for the next 90 days, focus on adding that area, you know, a little bit each week, lay out. So I have 3 rules of change. So the first rule of change is you've got to commit. It's a commitment. Hey, I'm going to make this change. Maybe it's physical leadership. You know what? Man, I haven't worked out for years, so I'm going to start taking care of myself. You know, I'm going to start working out 3 times a week. So that's the commitment. I'm going to start working out 3 times a week. So you recognize the need and we commit to it. Number 2, you got to take action. So many people talk about what they're going to do, but then they fail to take the action. You have to take the action. You have to actually start doing it. You got to find a gym or build a gym, or right now, COVID is making this very difficult, but there's all kinds of online programs, things you would not believe how much you can do with your body weight. In SEAL training, we don't lift any weights. It's all with your body weight. So things that you can do with your body weight, you have to take the action. And then number 3, discipline. You have to consistently keep doing. You have to continue to take that action until the change is made. You know, I've heard some people say that 30 days until something becomes a habit. I don't believe that. I believe at a minimum it's 90 days. And even then, it's easy to get out. Life is crazy. We're all inundated with all kinds of information. So for me, it's taken years to get back into the habit of, hey, I have to work out. It's part of what I do every day. And I would highly encourage you guys to implement those rules of change to create that change you're looking for.
You know, and when a person starts to do, you know, make a commitment and go into that, they ultimately, part of this process is moving into an uncomfortable zone, right? It could be physically uncomfortable. It could be mentally uncomfortable. It could be socially uncomfortable to go into a gym. But we live in a culture that embraces comfort. And in a lot of ways, that's the goal, right? Comfort is the goal. Comfortable car, comfortable home, comfortable lifestyle. But in reality, it's this comfort that's slowly killing us, isn't it? Discomfort is a critical part of what the overcome mindset is, isn't it?
It is. First off, I like comfort too. Don't get me wrong. I love a nice hotel. I love a nice car. You know, I love it when I get upgraded to first class. I mean, comfort is nice. The problem is if you only always seek comfort, it typically is not sustainable, because when we're comfortable, we're not challenging ourselves. We're not getting better. We only typically get better when we're uncomfortable. That's the reality. I mean, if you look at it from a working out perspective, if you go in the gym and you lift weights and you feel absolutely no burn, if I just pick up a 5-pound weight and I lift it 50 times and I don't feel a burn in any way whatsoever, I'm really not doing a whole lot. No different than if you're running or you're doing some kind of cardio and you're not breathing hard and you're not sweating, you're probably not doing a lot, because we have to get a little bit uncomfortable. I talk about something called the pyramid of change, and it's 4 levels of where people live their lives. At the very bottom level, and this is the smallest group, it's just a zone of no effort whatsoever. These are the individuals who they just don't care. They typically don't hold a job. I joke in my book, if there's a location for them, it's their parents' basement, but they've been there forever. They're 50 years old and they've never left their parents' basement. So that's kind of the zone of no effort. Above that is the comfort zone. And this is where the vast majority of people in life live, because we like comfort. We like to, if you tell me, hey, this is the minimum I need to do, most people will do that minimum, and then they just get comfortable. And it's easy to just get into this status quo. So many people will say, well, why change it if it's not broken? Well, you're not actually gaining any ground. It's not getting better. You're just moving along with the status quo. Above that is the zone of discomfort. And this is where it starts getting a little more challenging. We're doing things that are not within the norm of what we do. In the comfort zone, you almost can do things when we build routines and we do things over and over again. There almost is no thought process. You're really not challenging your mind. You're not challenging your body. You're not challenging your emotions. You're just going through a routine that you've done for a long time. That's why it's comfortable. When you get out of that, now it gets uncomfortable. Now you're having to learn something new that takes more mental effort, emotional, physical effort, all those things. The top level, the top of the pyramid, that's the burnout zone. And it gets dangerous there. Real type A individuals, type A personalities. I know I am guilty of this. If I'm not careful, I will push myself right into that burnout zone. And that's running in this zone of discomfort, constantly trying to make things happen. So where do we want to live? How do you make long-term change? And how do you constantly grow? I tell people that it is an infinite loop between the zone of discomfort and and the comfort zone. So when we're in the comfort zone and we decide, I got to make a change, we start pushing ourselves and we say, this is our goal. I'm going to have to get uncomfortable. Hypothetically, let's just say that, I haven't run in forever and I want to run a 10-minute mile. And right now, I can only run 11-minute mile. But over these next 3 months, I'm going to get to a 10-minute mile. So during this time that we're trying to get faster, it's going to be uncomfortable. I've got to push myself. I'm going to sweat. I'm going to be breathing hard. But when I reach that goal and I get to 10 minutes and I continue that, at some point, it will become relatively comfortable. It suddenly will become our comfort zone, our status quo. And once we do that, if we want to continue to grow and get better, we set a new goal and move ourselves out of that comfort zone one more time. So going back and forth between the comfort zone and the zone of discomfort. I'll tell you, elite performers live their lives this way. They are constantly looking at, there's a slogan one of my friend and mentor has. He says, never peak. And that's what that is. Constantly going back and forth, pushing outside of your comfort zone, setting new goals personally, physically, and professionally within your life, and always pushing.
That's great. So we had a comment come in from Scott Robertson, and it's really about leading other people, teammates, team members. And he asks, what would you do? How would you handle somebody who needs a little more motivation and maybe a underperformer? How would you address that?
So Scott, great question. I mean, the first thing I would do is I'd make sure I really know and understand this person. Have I really got to know them? As a leader, it's critical to understand your people. Everybody has different motivations for why they do things. For some people, they're motivated by money. They just want to make more money. And some people are motivated by praise and appreciation. And some people are motivated by time off with their family. Those are the things. So by understanding them, now I can really, if I know who they are and what motivates them, now I can start to structure things that is rewarding to them, that hopefully will incentivize them or, motivate them to want to make a bigger difference. The other thing, it's always important for people to understand how they play a part in that long-term mission. One of the things, what are the core values of your company? Are they a part of those core values? Do they understand what is that core focus that you guys are going after? In the military, we would call it the mission. So do they understand how they play into that? and that their actions are contributing both to themselves, to the team, and to the greater good of the company. I think making sure they understand that, and then looking at what motivates them and putting those things in place so that they're doing the things that motivate them. Because obviously, if they're not motivated by money, you can throw all the money in the world at somebody. If they're not motivated by money, and I will say that even people that are motivated by money, at the end of the day, that's not the end all be all. You know, money is not always the answer. A good work culture, a good team culture, the culture within a business, accomplishing a goal, you're providing value to people around you. That's going to make the difference for most people with any company or within any team. Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you talk about adjusting your expectations, and I'll take it back to your metaphor about being a young Ferrari, right? You faced some of this when you started to get back in shape, right? You were still looking at your pre-injury goals and the things you had accomplished then, and it created some frustration, and you learned that you had to go back and find what the new 100% is, right?
That's right. So when I was injured, obviously, you know, the Ferrari example, my Ferrari was crashed pretty hard. The frame was bent, the engine was damaged, you know, axles were broken, and putting me back together was a long, drawn out process. And by the time they were done, I was not the same. And that was a really hard thing when I finally decided, wow, I really got to get myself back in shape. I got to build myself back up. I still look back at the Ferrari that I was, and I still wanted to run 180 miles an hour on a track and to be able to do all the things I used to be able to do as a young Navy SEAL. And it was incredibly frustrating to me because that was the expectation, the unrealistic expectation I was setting on myself. And I had nerve damage. I had mobility issues with the damage to my left arm. There were just some things I could not do anymore. So it was incredibly unrealistic to think that I could ever be that full-blown Ferrari again. But it wasn't until I finally said, okay, so I'm never going to be that 100% I was. So what is my new 100%? You know, maybe it's 90%, but it doesn't matter because it's my new 100%. And that's where you got to push when you set those examples. You know, don't look at the past, look at the here and now. And what are you currently able to do? Most people set goals that are too high. And I know there's people out there that say set hairy, audacious, crazy goals, but oftentimes it's great. It's great to do that, but you've got to set smaller goals along the way, goals that are attainable and goals that are within the reality of your new 100% and what you have the ability to achieve. Once I started doing that, I really started moving down the road of success and getting myself back in shape. This year, to be able to do a full-blown Murph challenge, this was the first year I was able to do the entire thing, and it's a pretty grueling workout. And, you know, I had to do some things around my limitations, but you know, I've worked my way back up to my new 100%.
Yeah, and that actually ties in to what's going on in our business environment, right? Because we in some cases we may not be able to look pre-COVID at the way we operated, certainly the way we operated, the way customers interact with us, and everything else, the way we run the entire business, and so. In some ways, we have to look back at that the same way you're describing there and go, okay, now we've got these limitations, but what's our new 100%, and start striving for that, because continuing to strive for a pre-COVID environment success level is going to create burnout, right? Because you're chasing something you'll never catch unless and until we get back to that environment. So I see how that ties in, and it's very, very helpful. How quickly you can adapt to whatever unexpected and how relentlessly you drive forward is going to determine how quickly you rebound from the ambush, from the COVID interruption and those things like that, right?
Vince, absolutely. And the other thing to understand, when we are setting goals and we're moving forward, we're trying to get to our new 100% in our business and our personal life and relationship. The Japanese have a principle called the Kaizen Principle, and it is small incremental changes over time. And I think that's such a critical thing to understand. I'm super guilty of wanting to make things happen immediately. I'm very impatient. I have a bad habit of starting down a path, and if I'm not seeing immediate results shifting, as I'm getting older, I'm trying to be more patient and saying, hey, if this is a good plan and we know it's moving us in the direction, I need to be patient and I need to make sure I'm making small advances every day. I call it moving the needle, and understanding that those small advances are contributing towards that long-term goal. Because so many people, they set these big goals, they're not making those small steps, or they fail to see that these small steps add up to big success, and then they quit. So be patient. Just make sure every day you're moving the needle a little bit in your life, in your business, and hopefully physically.
No, that's good stuff. So as we wrap this up, I like you have an acronym. You talked about it last time in relation to the moving from an ambush, and it applies in each section. So let's close this out. I want you to unpack REACT acronym and its application in these areas.
Yeah, guys. So we talked about last time, when you're on the X, and the X is any point of attack, any point of incident, any point of crisis. For in the military, it's the point of the ambush. And we use REACT to quickly analyze, okay, this is where I'm at. And you can use it in any point that you need to analyze, a stuck point in your life. So in this case with the Pentagon, with REACT, that first acronym is recognize. We want to recognize, where are you in the Pentagon of peak performance? If you look at those 5 key areas, physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual, where are you weakest? What's the weakest area you're in? Which area would make the greatest impact for you to take positive action right now? And we have to be honest with ourselves. That's one of the biggest things about leading ourselves. Some people don't want to admit that they've got a problem. And, it's really important. Sometimes we may need to reach out to other people, and I may need to say, hey, Vince, man, do you feel like I'm a hothead? Honestly. And Vince may say, Jay, I got to tell you, man, I love you, man. But yeah, you fly off the handle a lot, and it really intimidates people.
I wasn't going to say that in front of everybody, but okay.
So yeah, we've got to be honest, because we can't take honest steps and honest action. We can't implement change if we truly can't say, this is where I'm at. Next step is we got to evaluate. So we evaluate where we're at. We evaluate, okay, what are the assets I have? If this is my weakest area, I'm just going to use physical because it's kind of easy. What are my assets? Well, I have some weights in my gym. I have access to this online training program. So that gets into our assess. How do we address those weak areas? Let's write down how we address them. Let's write down the action steps that we can start to take. Once we do that, we're going to choose a direction, and we're going to take that direction. We're going to communicate it to others. Choose and communicate. This is critical, guys. When you have a goal and you are trying to make a change, if you keep it within yourself, so often, if we don't articulate it out loud, we won't take action on it, because it's real easy, if it's not spoken and if people aren't aware of it, to just not do it. But when you tell
the minute you tell somebody, you've created accountability.
Absolutely. And I would even ask for an accountability partner. Hey, Vince, man, I really need some help. If you see me start to spin it up, to fly off the handle, will you, give me a special code word, bead window. Jay, bead window. And I'm going to be like, oh, okay, I got to calm down. I don't want to fly off the handle. We're taking these changes. He's my accountability partner. It can be your spouse. It can be a friend. It can be a business partner. But, choose and then communicate to them. And then that last one, guys, take action. Execute. You can talk till you're blue in the face. You can plan till you're blue in the face. But and here's the thing. It doesn't have to be perfect action. So many people are waiting for the perfect moment. An imperfect plan executed now is 1,000 times better than the perfect plan that never gets executed because you're waiting for perfection. It ain't going to come.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Jason, thank you so much for your time today. And I know that people are going to watch this over the next several weeks. I know that the prior interview that we did racked up a ton of views after it was done. So I'm super encouraged by that. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And we certainly look forward to talking to you again in a few more weeks. So everybody, go ahead.
Looking forward to it. So thank you to all of you for having me on. Keep driving forward. Just move that needle a little bit. I know these are challenging times, but small incremental gains every day will add up, and we'll get out of 2020. And I don't know about you. I'm really excited for 2021.
Yeah, I was hoping they might move up New Year's to like September, just so we can be done with 2020. But yeah,
I would pay money to see that happen.
Well, look, man, I really appreciate you and what you've shared with us today. So stay well, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right, bye-bye.